How you doing, good people? This is the 8-Bit Animal, and time for another history lesson. Let's hop in the Wayback Machine. We're gonna go back to, we're gonna start in 1986. In 1986, Atari Games released Super Sprint. Super Sprint ain't a bad game. It is a little bit different than typical racing games in arcades. And by typical racing games in arcades, I mean Pole Position. Or did Roll Blasters come out then? I don't remember. But Pole Position, Outrun, stuff like that. Super Sprint has a decidedly different look. And so it was relatively popular. So popular that a semi-sequel, Championship Sprint, was made and a bunch of ports happened. Most notably for us, Tengen released a version for the NES that was pretty doggone solid. Now, fast forward a couple of years, 1989, a company called Leland Corporation makes an arcade game that looks a lot like Super Sprint and stars a pro truck racer named Ivan Iron Man Stewart. And the game looks like Super Sprint in the sense of the camera angle and all that, but it's, you know, a bunch of dirt tracks, you're racing trucks, all that good stuff. There's Toyota branding in there because Toyota pickup trucks were popular for this type of racing. And Ivan Iron Man Stewart Super Off-Road gets ported to a bunch of places, including the NES. We talked about that back in April. Now, Leland Corporation takes that same formula, right, for Super Off-Road, and in 1991, they release an F1 game that looks suspiciously like Super Sprint. It's a beautiful arcade title. Like, the scope of the play field and all that, it's pretty, it's colorful, it looks nice. And instead of Ivan Iron Man Stewart, they put pro IndyCar racer Danny Sullivan on the title of this one. And we get Danny Sullivan's Indy Heat. Now, Danny Sullivan's Indy Heat gets ported to a bunch of different computers. And today, we're going to take a quick look at the NES version of Danny Sullivan's Indy Heat. Now, Indy Heat, like I said, looks a lot like Super Off-Road and Super Sprint kind of had a baby. It has the same, it's an IndyCar racing game, so that's where Super Sprint comes in. And it controls and handles a lot like, and looks a lot like Super Off-Road. There are instances where you gotta pull in to pit stops. Something really dark that I noticed here is that you can run over pit crew members when you're pulling out of pit road. And there'll be a little chalk outline there for a few seconds after you do so. It's kind of dark. But by and large, this game, if you like Super Sprint, this is a really good progression of that type of game, that type of racing game. One thing I will say about Indy Heat is that soundtrack is a whole lot better than say Super Sprint. It feels like they recycled a lot of sound effects and a few pieces of music from Super Off-Road though. I mean, if I remember correctly, Rare handled the port of Super Off-Road and Indy Heat, so that makes sense. Rare had all these assets that they used for the last game. Just shine them joints up, change a couple colors, change the pitch on some sound effects. Bang, you got it. It was easy rinse and repeat programming, and for what it's worth, it's not a bad game. But if we've played this twice already, I don't need to do it a third time. Particularly in 1992, after we had played so many other racing games that were probably a lot better than this one. No knock on this one, it's perfectly serviceable, but we had done this already. So why would we do it again? Now, if you decide you want a copy of Danny Sullivan's Indy Heat, the NES version of this game, about $25-$30. Like I said, it came out in 92, so it's a late entry into the NES library. And it's perfectly serviceable. But if you can get yourself a copy of Super Sprint, don't get a copy of Super Sprint. Might be a cheaper option for you. But I will say Indy Heat controls a whole lot better. Yeah, it controls a whole lot better, and it's a bit prettier. It's a bit prettier. So, yeah, there's that too. If that's what you care about, Indy Heat might be the move. I would say this: if you're not into racing games, paying over $30 for an NES cart of a racing game starring a dude that you probably never heard of before in your life might not be the move. That might not be a hot move for you. So, I don't know. Go with God, baby. Go with God. This has been the 8-Bit Animal. And I'll catch you beautiful people tomorrow. Oh yeah, something I almost forgot. Why they keep on giving us these games with these dudes on them and we ain't never heard of them? We don't know who Ivan Iron Man Stewart is. We don't know who Danny Sullivan is. Then you had Lee Trevino's fighting golf. Wasn't no fighting in it. I ain't get to punch nobody in the face. You had Mario Andretti had a game. We kind of knew who Mario Andretti was for some. I guess he did Reuniti commercials or something. I don't know. Who was Al Unser Jr.? Huh? Tomorrow. You know, this might be kind of racist, but all the early baseball games looked alike.